everyone. I am the fundraising chair of ESSA, and it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce bestselling author, coach, consultant, Brett Bartholomew. Brett has coached numerous of athletes from young athletes to Olympians, and it is my pleasure to introduce him. So, Brett, how are you today?
I'm doing all right, Akina. How are you?
Good. So, you have quite an extensive resume. You've accomplished a lot. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. So I just wanted to know, being a coach and being an author, how do you juggle everything? How do you find balance to you know be passionate with coaching and then still have time to go out into the community and just help other people, mentor people?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no such thing as balance. I think, tearing down that myth right away, what you look at is there's seasons to life, right? And there's times where you're going to have a little bit more time to focus on, maybe it's a work priority or your family or what have you. And then there's times where you're not going to be able to give equal time to both. And so I think that, we just as a society have to change the way that we talk about those things. We have to understand there's going to be times of uneven distribution, because when people think that you can balance all of these things, it's just not possible. I think a lot of it comes down to setting expectations. There's your own expectations of realizing you can't do it all. And then there's other people's expectations, which is something that, I've had to work on a lot at this point in my career, or even right now. This is probably one of the last interviews of any kind I'll do in 2020, aside from our own podcast and what have you. Not because I don't like getting on and interacting with people, but because, I'm raising a child with my wife, a new child. We own a business, a small business during a pandemic. We have 5 remote hires. I run 3 mastermind or mentoring groups in addition to the coaching that I do, trying to write a new book and getting my doctorate, and so I think the hardest thing about time management for me has been saying no, and then managing the repercussions of saying no. One, as a coach, you're somebody that wants to help as many people as you can, especially given my background. If anybody here has read my book, you hear about how I was hospitalized at a young age. I never had anybody that really was too concerned with coming to my aid early on. If anything, I was seen as a threat in my industry because I started building a quote unquote brand for myself at an age that was younger than most. And there were a lot of people that thought that was wrong, when really all I was trying to do is spread my message. But what you find is, unfortunately, when you have to start getting to that point in your life and career where you have to tell some people no, or you have to start charging a different rate for your time, there's people that are angry, right? There's people that felt like, oh, you're big time, or couldn't you do this, or couldn't you squeeze that in? I made a social media post about that yesterday, where a lot of times people think if you say no to something, you're saying that that person or that thing is not important. And it's not saying that as much as, hey, I have limited bandwidth here. So I think you just have to be hyper conscious of knowing that, think about it. Do you see your favorite musician come out with a new album every month? Do they go on tour all the time, right? You want to give people your best. And that comes down to you being able to budget your energy and your time and the expectations of others. So hopefully that gives you a better answer as opposed to people that just kind of come on. I know I always hated the typical answers you get of, oh, well, you just prioritize. And when your values are clear to you, you're going to understand the right thing to do. That's all well and good. And that makes for a very good leadership book, but it's not always that clean or that simple in real life.
That was a great answer. I should have taken notes.
Well, you're recording it, so you're all good.
I can always go back and reference it, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you guys any BS answers here. I know we have varied crowds, but that's the one thing. If you follow me, I can promise I'm not flashy. I'm none of this, but I don't want you guys to go out into the world with an unrealistic expectation. I mean, even just being a strength coach, what drove me nuts is people saying, hey, get your degree, get a certification, get an internship, and then grind, and it's like, yes, those things are important, right? Yes to all of those things, but that is not what's going to get you through your career, nor is that going to help you get the job you want in totality. There are a lot of very educated, talented people out there with their degree, with their certification, and who have done internships and are still not getting paid more than $20,000 a year, right? When I got my master's degree, I was in charge of 6 or 7 teams at Southern Illinois. I was an assistant for basketball and football. And then I worked and got the privilege to work with pro athletes and youth athletes and a whole bunch of people at a relatively young age. I didn't get my first real paycheck that was more than $10,000 until I was 25. and my first paying job paid me about $35K, which I was grateful for. But, as somebody that had their master's degree and, you had other things that you had to pay for, that's not as much as you think. On one end, when you get your first paycheck, you're like, whoa, like I have money. And then on the other end, you're like, wow, that goes extremely fast. So I want to give you guys practical stuff because I've seen the after effects of people hanging on until they're like 30, or beyond, doing the same things everybody else is doing. And then wondering, hey, why is my family, why don't we have enough money to eat? Why can't we do this? And all that. So.
Right. So like, how are you able to get to who you are today? Like, you're like, you're verified on Instagram, like you're very like, you're well known. So how were you able to get to where you are today?
One, it'd be interesting to hear your opinion of where you think I am. Right. And,
you're like successful. You own multiple businesses. You're a coach, you're, heavily involved in your community. So like, you're just, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I'm trying to determine and Ben, or Michael, you tell me this too. Do you guys want the real answer? Like what kind of answer do you want here? Because
real authentic, from the heart, just pure answer.
Lindsay, do you agree? Lindsay Carroll, you agree? You want, okay. It's a lot of really, 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 really frustratingly hard, consistent work done over time. There's a lot of fun parts without a doubt. Coaching athletes, doing these things is a lot of fun, but like any job, you're going to deal with interpersonal politics. You're going to deal with BS, right? I turned down a job that I had, was like my primary goal in 2015 to go work with a good friend of mine in the NFL. But I had already accepted another job offer, right, to go as a part of a startup in another place. And so I saw this opportunity, and then I had to make this decision of like, well, the NFL, like I'd have instant credibility and this and that, and I'd get to work with a friend, but I also, gave my word to this person. And on this side, I'd get to be a strength coach and learn business and all these things. And I just remember a buddy told me like, hey, you need to future-proof yourself, right? Like every job is a business to some degree. And I think an old me would have just gone to the NFL and been like, whatever I had to do. But I grew up in Nebraska. You grew up in a family where your word is your bond. I went and made a very unpopular move. And because I took that risk and did something uncertain and did something that wasn't flashy, but was really, 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 really hard and frustrating, I came out of it a lot better. That year in LA, I learned a lot more about business. I learned a lot more about a word, that can best be described as working with Machiavellian individuals, right? Like power dynamics. And so I just think the things that coaches aren't told a lot, and I have this stuff on YouTube and I have a whole thing on my website, my career advice I wish I would have received. It's all free. And my podcast, I go super deep. But like, you just have to take a lot of risks, and you have to make a lot of unpopular decisions, and you have to understand there's no playbook for this. Like I had a friend, and he's a close friend. He wouldn't mind me sharing this. When I got out of being an intern, I remember he had gotten a graduate assistantship at the University of Georgia, and I got one at the University of Southern Illinois. And I'm like, damn, man, like, you got a SEC school, bigger thing like this, I'm going to like division or FCS and what have you. Well, he ended up, basically having to babysit 5-star offensive linemen, barely ever got a coach. And I got to go and be an assistant coach for 2 teams and a head coach for 6. Right. And so I think that a lot of people just don't look laterally. They always go for what's flashy, what looks quick. I have friends that have worked in the NFL 18 years and they'd rather work with high school kids. And I have, friends, and so they're trying to get out of high school, where I have other people that they've been holding on to a job that's barely paying them anything forever just so they can get to the NFL. Everybody thinks the grass is greener. Does anybody watch Game of Thrones? Anybody ever watch that? Like I wanted to break the wheel. When I came up, it was you either went and became a strength coach in the team setting, whether pro or college, or you went and owned your gym. And I felt like there had to be this middle ground, right? I saw all these other professions that, a dentist down the street doesn't just own his own practice or clean teeth the rest of their life. They find other ways to get involved. And so I'm like, what if I could still train athletes, but also work with corporations and, the military and everything else on leadership and communication, things that I deal with every day as a coach, because you see that in other fields, right? Like you see academics like Angela Ducksworth, she goes and gives presentations. You see Jocko Willink, who is a Navy SEAL, he presents, but in strength and conditioning, everybody just kept it in-house. So I like to think I just thought bigger, took a lot of risks, but it definitely has not come without, gray hairs in my beard. Its fair share of hate. Like I said, there were a lot of people that were not happy when my book was successful, I got a lot of, oh, you're 30 years old. Why should you be writing a book? Or strength coaches shouldn't have a website. You shouldn't have an Instagram. Like you're not we're not brand here. And I'm just like, it just was a lot of small thinking. I mean, my doctor has an Instagram account, right? Like why should a strength coach not, and it doesn't mean you have to have one. It just means there doesn't have to be these strict, dumb rules that people live by. Get in where you fit in, provide value to people, and understand that it is a relentless journey. Like that's it, and you got to be consistent. Everybody's got a goal, and that's phenomenal. But your goal, like if you're having some 5-year goal, you need to be realistic and shrink that down to about 6 months and then be able to adapt from there. Cause that's how fast life moves at you.
Yeah. And honestly, I just love how you're just like going deep into your story about like not taking the NFL position. This reminds me of a person that I've talked to and gotten to know out of Fight. He was a co-founder with Bobby Smith at Reach Your Potential Training. Yeah. He's heart of gold, and he took a big risk with going up to New Jersey, and they established a great business. So, that's just, what it reminded me of. And this post actually resonated with me when you posted about every day feels like I have failed because of like how many goals and ambitions you've had. How do you kind of like deal with those feelings, and how do you cope with, those feelings?
The same way any of us deal with our demons, right? There's some days where I'll go out in the garage and like, I'll just try to literally exercise them, double entendre, right? Like last night I was frustrated at something and, went out probably at 10:30 at night and did 2,000 feet as fast as I could on the Versa climber, right? There's other nights I bury it into my work. This is this stuff I'm working on now is pretty challenging. Like I love studying sets, reps, agility, all that stuff. My master's degrees in motor learning, but the stuff I'm learning now on communication and social science is extremely challenging in a different way. Human behavior is something that has been grossly overlooked in coaching to the point where in 2016, they recorded 285 coach development programs out there. Less than 6% focus on interpersonal skills. Yet you think about that, and a 2013 article talked about in healthcare, conversely, $12 billion a year is lost in the US alone due to poor communication, either because of people being in hospitals too long, getting the wrong medical care, losing this. Well, it happens in strength and conditioning and training as well, right? Poor communication is the one thing guaranteed to make any situation worse. It is. When I'm dealing with 50 athletes that all have a variety of backgrounds that collectively make over $500 million in the terms of their contract, and they're looking at me, a 5'8" white boy from Omaha, Nebraska, who can't do the things they do, I have to get their respect and their understanding and their attention in 1 minute. You know what I mean? Yet I hear all these coaches whine and complain that people don't have an attention span anymore and they don't have this. None of that's true. Kids go play video games for 3 hours. They binge watch Netflix. They're on social media. They have an attention span. You're just not tapping into it. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I go to people's facilities and I wave a wand and now everybody pays attention. But what I am saying is there's a method to this, and it requires a lot of deep research. And so when I get frustrated, I try to dive deeper into some stuff. Or the third thing I'll give you is sometimes I step back from it. Like after this call, I need to work a little bit on my doctoral work. I can only work on that stuff for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I got to go do something where I can turn my brain off. Right? Like, so I think everybody's got to find what works for them. I think that I know what doesn't work for me is the same thing that got me hospitalized, going down some OCD, obsessive compulsive rabbit hole and getting into this mentality that you see so pervasive in today's society where it's just grind, try to prove yourself, prove the haters wrong. That'll end to a lot of emptiness, a lot of unhappiness. It only fuels you for so long. You weren't expecting that answer, huh?
No, I mean, honestly, that was just like great analysis. You're just like, you're being real. That's like what we need in the society today. So thank you for.
You guys got to listen to the podcast. I'm a little bit even more unfiltered. So if this resonates with you, we have leaders from a variety of different industries that come on, and we have one rule. Don't bring leadership BS here. Like, tell the real, right? Talk about real people struggling with real stuff and how you're overcoming it. And we're not interviewing a bunch of celebrities. We're interviewing real people out there. Cause I think that was another thing too, right? Like, growing up, I could listen to there was like one main podcast in strength and conditioning. It was Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning podcast or strength coach podcast. And it's good. I love Mike and I love Anthony Renna, but they always had a lot of well-known coaches on there. And here I was as a GA, and I'm like, man, I'd love to hear from like other GAs or other people out there trying to make it, other GAs going through stuff. But I was nobody and I could never get on these kinds of shows or what have you. So I was like, when I get a platform someday, I'm going to reach out to other people, you know, at every length of the spectrum, no matter what job they're in, what have you, just where they're at in that journey. And so that's what we started to do. And the podcast has grown like 409% in a year. So we're trying to keep it going and we're trying to bring value. Cause I know that stuff made me feel angry and lonely and kind of just frustrated, you know, cause you after a while, you know how it is. You listen to these big podcasts or interviews, the celebrities or the hyper successful people say the same thing over and over. And it never really feels like they're real. You know, it's like, you know, hard work, determination, and just, you know, had a passion for it. It's like, oh, okay, so all we need is passion. Got it.
What's the name of your podcast? So I can actually tune in and listen to it.
Yeah, the Art of Coaching podcast. It's on anywhere you get podcasts. So the Art of Coaching podcast, super simple. And if people just go to artofcoaching.com, you can find everything, our courses, podcasts, books, free resources, all that. So Art of Coaching.
And, you know, just going back to your point, and all you need is a bit of luck, right? Because in this industry, for example, with college athletics in particular, you know, Ron McKeefery actually spoke to us a couple of weeks ago in September, and he basically talked to us about the 5 coach strength rule in college that is in right now. So each department, I believe in college football, was only allowed 5 college strength coaches and 4 graduate assistants. So, you know, the opportunities do seem very limited. How, you know, so it is a little bit frustrating from that point. So like where else would you suggest that we look for opportunities to kind of like grow ourselves as professionals in this field?
Yeah, I mean, without sounding salesy, we did a whole course on this with a bunch of other college strength coaches like Andrea Hootie, Donnell Boucher, Ron was a part of it. It's called Valued, and it's on artofcoaching.com. But we basically went through a 2-day masterclass of how coaches could more responsibly brand themselves, how they need to approach networking differently, how they need to understand contracts, how they need to negotiate more appropriately. Because you ask any strength coach, a majority of them, I know myself included, never had any kind of business background, none, you know, and maybe you took a class or an elective in college or whatever, but, you know, it's a field that basically says, yeah, it's not about the money and, you know, first in, last out and like, great, you know, but like, I don't see any other professions marching around saying that. To a point, it kind of became cognitive dissonance, right? Like, yeah, did I become a strength coach for the money? Hell no. But do I need to pay my bills, right? Like I can't go into the bank and be like, hey, sorry, I'm delayed on my mortgage, but guess what? I'm in it for the right reasons and it's not about the money. So we're all good, right? Like that doesn't happen. And so we wanted to create a course that just kind of took down all that crap and said, hey, no, you shouldn't get into this field for the money, but you absolutely should know how to make money and manage money and market yourself because you're a professional, right? And a professional gets paid for what they do. If an electrician comes out to my house or a plumber, he doesn't say, hey man, you know, it's not about the money, but I need to get paid. Oh, I am handed a bill, right? And so I recommend people check that course out first and foremost. We made it for a reason because that's going to be able to go in way greater depth than I ever could on this. But I think, you know, within that, like you just got to learn more about business. Like you got to learn what your time is worth. I remember I was speaking, you know, for like, and I've spoken a lot for free. I've done a ton for free. Right. And so there's a point in everybody's life. And I had an episode with Joe DeFranco on my podcast where it talks about you need to do some things for free, but there's a point where you need to know what your time is worth. And I'll never forget one time hearing that there was this personal trainer down the street and, you know, nice guy, you know, nothing wrong with him, but had no college education in this stuff, had no background in it, no certification. He was charging like, you know, nearly $300 an hour. And here I was essentially training somebody for $50 an hour. And sometimes that's where you're at, right? Like for some parts of my career, that's where I was at and you're blessed to get that. And that's what it was. But for where I was at in my career now, I was like, listen, with what I'm juggling and all this, I need to reevaluate what my time is worth. Then I looked at opportunity costs. What am I missing out on? The hours that I'm training these amounts of people, or the hours that I'm away speaking. How many hours am I putting into presentations? How much research am I doing? So I turned pro, and that's a book everybody needs to get, Stephen Pressfield's Turning Pro. And I realized that this is what my time's worth. So I tell people, like, know what your time is worth. There's tons of calculators and different ways you can figure that out online, right? Understand not just your goal, but who you're trying to impact, right? Know your audience, and then be able to like create a vehicle for that. Like my podcast, my courses, my book, that is just because like you put something out in the world that can help more people. I can't answer every DM on Instagram, and it doesn't mean those people aren't important. It just means I have a life like any of you have a life. And so and plus the amount of times I get asked, what book should I read? I probably got asked that book 10,000 times. So eventually I just put out a free downloadable list. Hey, here's 200 books you should read if you're a strength coach, and you can download it for free, right? Because that can help way more people. So I think once you get really serious about your time, your career, you understand what your time is worth. Are you a father? Are you a mother? Like, okay, well, then why are you charging $225 to go speak at a conference for 3 days? When you don't even know what that's costing your business, And so I just think that coaches need to get better business education. They need to quit being so picky about where they start. There's coaches that are, I want to work with pros. So they'll have an opportunity that they'll pass up that could pay them $50,000 a year to work at a great high school. But because it's not the pros, they won't take it. Are you kidding? You know what I mean? Like go where you need to go. And plus, like, understand this, like, the stuff that you hear about, oh, you won't get a job in this setting if you leave. I got told when I left college athletics, if you leave and go to the private sector, you'll never get a team job again. I've had 5 opportunities in the last 3 years to go back to pro sport. That is so much bullcrap. If you're good at what you do and you're ethical and you maintain great relationships, you're going to find a job, right? But if you're somebody that is entitled and you can't work autonomously and you think things are given to you and that you're owed and you're going to trash talk other coaches, don't be surprised when you can't land something, because that's another big issue in the field. The amount of people that just chirp and, Samuel's on. Sam, do you like Sam or Samuel?
Sam is fine.
Okay. So like, Sam, you'll go to conferences sometimes and you'll see other coaches be like, oh, that guy didn't know what he's talking about. Like just focus on you. You know what I mean? Like I've never met one really successful person that has ever wasted their time talking bad about somebody else. Like, what's the point? Just do your stuff. So I think our field just has a lot of growing up to do and getting a sound, like just basic education and some business stuff, and the resources I think we provide and valued help that, right? It just expands your ability to kind of be like, oh yeah, like there's more ways that I can be viewed as more than just a weight room guy or gal. I'm going to use guy as an inclusive term. There's so much more value you can provide, because it's funny, man. Like, and this is the last thing I'll say on this. When I went and spoke for like Wells Fargo and Facebook, I'll never forget when they were like, oh, you're a strength coach, huh? And I was dressed professionally. I had a nice button down, some nice jeans. I wasn't going to wear like a suit there. That would have been pretentious. And I was like, yeah, why? And they're like, well, you're just not what we expected. You're a bit more professional. When we think weight room, we kind of think like drill sergeant or Jillian Michaels and whatever. And that's what I realized going to speak for these bigger corporations. Guys, like the weight room to the majority of the world, of which there's 8 billion people, is not synonymous with like leadership. Most people hear weight room and they think like JoJo, the juiced up personal trainer at Globo Gym. And so I think strength coaches also have to be realistic about how they're viewed externally, because a lot of strength coaches are like, oh, I don't get this job and I got fired by our GM. Yeah, you're not looked at as essential staff. You're not and so you can't just identify as some weight room person. You need to identify as a professional. I blacked out.
So I have a question. So the fitness industry is, it's predominantly dominated by males. So what advice would you give to any females who are trying to, break into the fitness industry and, make a household name for themselves?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, because it's a big reason. We've had a lot of female guests on our show purposefully. I actually was one credit off from getting a minor in women's studies. So this is something that I'm super passionate about. I worked at a sorority for 4 years too. So, I have that to my background. That's a funny aside. Somebody's supposed to laugh at that. I did. It was a good paying job in college. I worked at a boxing gym and I worked at a sorority, and you got free food and whatever. I think the biggest mistake I see some female strength coaches making is sometimes they try to coach like they have a chip on their shoulder, right? Like a female strength coach should not try to act like a male strength coach. Half of these male strength coaches don't even know what they're doing, right? They're either coaching the way they were coached as a kid, or they see somebody that they think is a successful coach and they mimic that. Just most people in general, male or female, don't have a lot of self-awareness. You know what I mean? They don't. They're not okay with themselves. And, you know, when I did work with some really the best female strength coaches I've ever worked with, just owned who they were. They didn't go out there and try to, you know, amplify what they were doing out of fear of not getting the respect out of guys. I mean, one of the best female strength coaches I know is a woman named Jennifer Noyles. And Jennifer coached Major League Baseball players, combine athlete guys going through the NFL combine, what have you. And she never went out trying to act like Tommy Tough Guy. She was Jenny, and Jenny could be very serious, and Jenny could be very quirky, or Jenny could be very like studious and educated, right? I look at it as like, I'm a big hip hop guy, right? And I've always liked rappers that have multiple personas, whether it's like a Kendrick Lamar or an Eminem. I like people that can bounce between like serious or thoughtful, and they could, and as a coach, you've got to do that same thing. If you guys came and watch me coach, you'd see sometimes where I'm very stern, very to the point, not messing around. Then you'd see me coach another day and you'd see just jokes, really bad jokes all over the place. But that's reading the room, right? And so I think just like not trying to fit into some mold is what these female strength coaches need to do. And listen, a lot of that in truth is because there's just not as many female strength coaches in the field, and you're not always going to see equal numbers in every field. You're just not, right? Like that's just and Simon Barone Cohen is doing really interesting work out of, I think, Cambridge University. There's arguments to be made that like you see why men dominate in numbers, at least in STEM fields, a lot of times due to the presence of testosterone in vitro, you know, and the amount of neurons in the brain and what have you. Males tend to be more systematized oriented, right? And females tend to be more empathize oriented. That's why they say females actually make better CEOs. Now, irrespective of brain like structural differences, there's not one structural difference that accounts for intelligence, right? So more neurons doesn't mean more intelligence. Women have more, I think, white matter, men have more gray matter, but all this stuff is contextual. The point is like if we want more women strength coaches, you got to get more influx in the field, and you've got to change the field's image. I mean, let's be real. Like my wife was a female strength coach, and she worked at Nebraska and she worked in corporate wellness or whatever. But my wife is not some like gung-ho, go hard, you know, I'm going to lift until my eyes bleed person, right? She's a pretty easy person to get along, but she takes her job seriously. So I think the image of strength and conditioning turns a lot of people off. Guys, it turns me off to a degree. I'll be honest. I loved working in college strength and conditioning, but it's not something that appeals to me right now. Because a lot of the college strength and conditioning, at least how I knew it, was just guys with their arms folded, barking orders. It was kind of like you had to be like I was called a pretty boy because I didn't have a shaved head and I wasn't a former power lifter, you know? And if we want the best people to be a part of this field, male or female, these have got to be environments that are more indicative of just where a professional would work. It does. And there's a lot of Brianna Battles is another really great strength coach. I could label off a million of them, but they don't they don't try to be something they're not. They don't try to coach with a chip on their shoulder. They leverage what they have and they mix within that. And I think they also need to market themselves. I'm sorry, they do. You know, the end of the day, I got reached out to by somebody that worked in the NBA the other day, and they said, "Hey, do you know any good minority strength coaches?" And I said, "Well, sure, of course." And he goes, "Well, any that need jobs, you know, we need more diversity on this staff, and it was an oversight from the last staff, and we need help." And I said, "Well, where have you been looking?" He goes, "Well, as sad as it sounds." He goes, you know, we look at social media because we know that social media isn't indicative of a lot, but there's also people out there who do brand themselves intelligently. But if you're a coach that doesn't even have a website, get something basic up, right? Like you have to think of a website like real estate. This is something I learned way too late. I wanted no part of social media. I wanted no part of any of this crap. I just wanted to do my job. But then it was Ron McKeefrey who told me, hey, if you don't own your digital real estate, you can't complain when the Google results come up if somebody types your name in and it's either nothing or not what you want to see, you know? And, I have a friend who's running for mayor right now. And if you Google his name, like a slam article from some like writer, some blogger comes up as the first thing because this guy doesn't have his own website. So I think if you're a male strength coach, female strength coach, anything, you need to market yourself intelligently, get a basic landing page, tell us who you are, why you're in the field, right? Don't try to be anything that you're not, but you've got to learn the ins and outs of marketing. If somebody can't find you, how are they ever going to hire you? That's just the real. That's what it is. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some pointed answer. If I can summarize, don't be something you're not. Don't try to overcompensate. Make sure you're visible, because while visibility doesn't equal viability, it certainly helps if somebody's looking for you and trying to understand a little bit more of who you are. And I think just, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to have to be consistent and understand that you're going to have to overcome some challenges. Everybody in this field to some degree is going to overcome some kind of bias and challenge. They are. Is that clear enough? Because if it was a BS answer, I'll go deeper.
No, that was very clear, because for me, I'm like really into fitness, and I actually started my own like fitness brand. I just started it like over the quarantine. Like I was really I was just trying to find ways to stay healthy and out. So I was like, you know what? I started creating home workouts, started posting videos, got a couple thousand views, people sharing it. So I'm just trying to find like the best way to market myself. Even males were like DMing me and messaging me saying like, yo, like, it's really cool that you're female and you're really working out. The only thing I didn't like is when they're comparing me to males, like, oh, you work out like a guy.
Yeah, but that's going to happen. I mean, I get compared to, like, I have a podcast and I have people that compare me to Joe Rogan. And I'm like, time out. This guy's had a podcast for 12 years and has a whole staff. It's me doing this. I've been doing this for a year. And so like, uneducated people are just going to do that. And they typically, and I don't mean uneducated as they're not intelligent. I just mean they're not like understanding the context, right? Like I think I told you, I give people a 200 book reading list. I had 2 guys email me saying I'm rude for not telling them which book to start with. And I'm like, I don't know you. I have no idea who you are, what you struggle with. What do you mean? Like, I'm supposed to tell you what book to start with? You know what I mean? Like, nobody told me what, like, we just live in this culture now where everybody wants to be put into a box and people don't want to be told how to think. They want to be told what to think. There's not a week that goes by where, hey, you like 4x6 or 6x4? I'm like, oh my God. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, what's your goal? Like, who are you training? Like, you're going to get strong in so many different ways. So I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and don't even worry so much about the metrics. I mean, what do I have? Like 92,000 followers on Instagram. There's some days I post something and I get 400 likes, right? And that ain't that many. And I know damn well if I kept posting videos of me training like Julius Peppers or Matthew Stafford or, Roy Jones, like any athlete that I worked with in the day in any sport, I know I'm going to get like 10 to 30,000 views. But that's not what I'm trying to do now, right? I'm trying to own the how to coach coaches thing. So I put up stuff every day that I know is not going to go as viral as but that's whatever. That's me. Like your audience needs to find you. And it also took me 5 years to get that following. I have people that are like, yo, like I've been doing this for 6 months. I'm like, 6 months? You're kidding? Oh my God. Like 6 months. You better be ready to do, like some people write books. George R.R. Martin wrote like one of those books for like 20 years. Like, come on, so just keep doing it and experience. The important thing is that you're engaging with it. You're interacting with it. You're learning how these things work. That's the important thing because your audience will find you if you're consistent enough.
I think that's what I work on, consistency. Because right now, like I'm just focusing on rebranding like my entire like image and like brand, like coming with like different like workouts and different videos so I can like film them. So I'm just working on like better content so I can like engage with my audience.
And good content over time is where it's at, and then actually engaging with it. You want loyal people. Not everybody's going to follow you. I'm never going to be an account that has 1 million followers because I'm not going to post a bunch of, don't kid yourself. If I do a bunch of shirtless workout videos where I show the agility drill of the week and whatever, like all that stuff's easy, but is that what you want to be? Is that where you're at right now? You know what I mean? So like, just know who you are and know how to define that. Like I'm a fundamentals, not fluff guy that's teaching coaches how to coach better, bottom line. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, I don't need to prove myself. I've trained over 500 pro athletes. If you follow my background, you know that. I don't need to tell you about it every day. And I also don't need to build my brand off the back of them and show every day, what my athlete was doing. That's not what I want to do. Good questions.
When it comes to branding, right? How important is it like to get an LLC and like show legitimacy in your company?
Yeah, I think it's smart. I think, and you bring up something 90% of people never even talk about. I think if you're owning a company and you're training people, you need to have an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And then we talk about that in Valued. I have 3 LLCs, for different businesses that I run. I mean, you're talking about something that's like $200, right? And it validates that you have a legitimate business and it also protects you, Sam. So if you're training somebody and heaven forbid, they got injured because injuries happen, and they decide to sue you, right? Like they sue your LLC. They can't sue you, and like you have to protect yourself. That's the whole point of an LLC. So an LLC legitimizes your business. It's a smart thing to do from a tax standpoint. I'll have coaches that are like, I'll ask them what kind of continuing education they do. And they're like, I really can't afford it. And I'm like, you can't afford it. Like, you can't afford not to afford it. And having an LLC allows you to take advantage of tax write-offs and what have you. And tax write-offs don't mean things are free, but it means that you get a deduction because guess what? The government, we live in a country, fortunately enough, where the government wants to help small businesses. It wants to grow those things. So I think an LLC is a critically important thing. And it bugs me that coaches aren't taught that. And again, I wasn't either. I wouldn't have known anything about that had my dad not been a financial advisor. And my dad was a financial advisor because he lost his dad when my dad was only like 12 years old. So he had to learn this shit the hard way, And so pardon my language, but again, we're just talking real. Absolutely. Setting up an LLC is important. Is it going to make you more legit as a trainer? No, I mean, no athlete's going to care if you have an LLC or not, but it makes you more legit as a professional, right? And it's a smarter thing to do. I don't speak anywhere, even for the nonprofit I sit on the board. I don't speak anywhere without somebody signing a speaking contract through my LLC. That's business. That just is what it is, And so I think that's a really good question. Does that help? Does that answer it?
It does.
I'm glad you brought that up. You got it. Are you getting an LLC?
Yeah, I plan on getting one. I have what we call like a non-legitimate Instagram brand that I'm trying to push. And
yeah,
I've seen a lot of coaches that are in your position or on your stature about what do you call it, the importance of getting an LLC.
Yeah, definitely get like an actual, I mean, again, it doesn't cost much at all to file it, right? And there's a lot of really good information online. If you just go to SBA, like Small Business Association, SBA.gov, there'll be all kinds of great information on how to form an LLC. And we're coming out with a course. I don't know when you're releasing this, but we're coming out with a course all about this, guys, called Blind Spot. That is all about like, if you're a coach of any kind, if you're a leader of any kind, that's basically like, yo, I want to help more people. And I think I got a way where I can do that, with the content I put out, but I have no idea where to start. I have no idea which of my ideas is the best. And I kind of doubt myself a little bit, or I'm freaked out. We're coming out with a course in February of 2021 that walks you through all of that. We already have all the videos filmed. We already have the outline done. We just got to put it together, and that's going to be on Teachable. It's going to be, it's definitely, it'll save you a lot of time and trouble. Cause guys, you don't do these things right. People always say, oh, I don't have the time and I don't have the money. As somebody that has co-owned 2 businesses and now owns his own, listen, like some of these things that might be upfront costs now save you 4 times the time and the money you would spend doing it the wrong way and fixing it. I once tried to trademark something without really understanding trademarks. It cost me $5,000. $5,000. Like I couldn't fathom that because I did it wrong. I'd wasted that $5,000. If I would have learned that and I just would have paid a lawyer $1,200 who was trying to give me some sound advice, I wouldn't have made that mistake. But I looked at that and I'm like, oh, I can't afford that. So I promise you, like, one of the biggest mistakes I see in this field is we have really unhealthy attitudes towards money. Really unhealthy attitudes towards money. People don't like, if it's not a book or it's not free, they ain't going to buy it. That's a terrible idea. I gave plasma one time so I could go to this conference. This conference was $800. And I remember I got an idea that later on ended up becoming one of the biggest things that helped me in my career. And it made me 5 times that. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't be short-sighted. Like, don't underestimate the value of an idea. And plus, you're about to tell people they should pay for you and you're not going to pay for other stuff. That always cracks me up too. I got, this guy's like, well, I charge this and this and this. And I'm like, well, what do you spend on continuing education a year? Man, I'm trying to save right now. I'm like, so you tell people they need a coach, but you don't go out and spend money on stuff either. And a lot of that is because people get freaked out. They're like, well, if I buy an online course and I don't finish it, am I going to make that money? And it's like, hey, that's on you. Like, you can't be a hypocrite. I get it. We all have books we haven't finished, courses we haven't finished, but like, I don't know. It's just, that's my number one advice. Nobody likes to hear. There is a lot of information you can't not afford to invest in. You know, I'm paying a coach this year $18,000 to help me with something through my business. And again, a couple of years ago, that amount of money is unfathomable. I'm not rich. If you buy my book on Amazon right now, I think I get $2 to $3. You know what I mean? And that book cost me $25,000 to write. Like, I have a small child. My wife works for the company, so I pay her salary. You know, this could all go away tomorrow. You know, we needed government help just like anybody in COVID. But I still pay a coach $18,000 to help me with something, because that kind of risk is just necessary in life if you want to be able to learn more. So I hope that point's clear.
So I actually want to kind of like go off of that and talk about the hashtag one team approach, as our former director of exercise science, Dr. Skurza, once taught us. So how has that approach really helped you to grow your company to what it is today?
Yeah, I need to learn a little bit more about that. Can you give me some more context?
So I guess, so like Sam and I were actually talking about this the other day, and we were just like sharing the messages that we exchanged with each other before we started speaking. And you were talking about Jordan, your person that's in charge of making your schedule.
Executive. She's my assistant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you were just mentioning how it's important to have people on your team so that you can do the things that you want to do. So how has that kind of like separated you from the rest?
Yeah, I mean, I think critical. I mean, I just told you I paid $18,000 for a coach, but like 3 years ago when I hired my first assistant, I had never really employed anybody 100% with my own money. You know, even when I was like co-owner and somehow in LA, it wasn't, you know, all my money. And so now, you know, it was just getting overwhelming, man. It was overwhelming where I'm coaching athletes, I'm answering emails, I'm trying to do social media, I'm going to speak internationally. Like, I couldn't do it all, you know, but at the same time, I didn't trust a lot of people, because there's just not a lot of, it's hard to find hardworking, good people. I didn't even know where to find it. And I remember I'd gotten a referral from a friend and said, hey, you should try my friend. She's an assistant, and it was going to be $25 an hour. And she didn't really work out. You know, it was kind of one of those people that was a nice person, but every day she was like sick, and, you know, I couldn't count on her for much. I would tell people to reach out to her and they wouldn't get responses. So I'm like, I looked at my wife and I'm like, this is awful. Like, you know, and so then I tried again. And then we had somebody that ended up, I literally gave her $500 up front and was like, I am serious about this and I really need help, because she had said that she had an employer that hadn't paid her in the past. And I'm like, show of good faith, whatever. So paid her up front. She worked out well for a couple of months, and then she started lying on her timesheet, you know, and again, like, this is money that I'm not guaranteed. We just moved to Atlanta. I have a young family. Like, you know, there's so many things going on. And so I tried one more time, you know, and eventually I found Jordan, and, you know, I was just like, hey, listen, I have a crazy life. I have a lot of plates spinning at once. I hate email, you know, like it's not part of my day to day. I'm the only one on my team that creates this, right? So whether it's my book, Conscious Coaching, bought in, our online course, it's a sequel to that, Valued, I'm doing all this, you know, and trying to coach and trying to be a dad. And so I'm like, I need help. And it was critical because, like, you know, it's not perfect. Jordan's still learning. We have an employee that's a great guy, but he's in over his head on some things. You know, my wife's got a screaming baby and she can only work for the company basically between 9 p.m. and 12 p.m. So having a team isn't always going to be perfect, but you've got to be able to delegate, because you can't do it all. You'll burn out. I burn out twice in my career. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty intense dude. And I had to learn more about how to like manage my emotional energy. That's just how I am. So I think if you don't have a team, I think, again, you can get by on a lot with like raw determination, power, wanting to prove people wrong, having a big purpose, whatever that is for you. But eventually you're going to get spread thin, you know, and to be your best self, you got to deal with it. But even that I faced heat for. I mean, I think you were cool with it, but I had people when I first hired an assistant that's like, oh, big time now, got an assistant. I'm like, why is this big time? I'm like, yo, I have somebody on my team that helps me. I would never go and schedule an appointment at my doctor, talk to an assistant, and then go and see the doctor and be like, yo, you're big time. You got an assistant. Like, that's just, you got to like get help, right? Like get help. And I think that a team, you can go faster alone, but further together. There you go. I'll give you a fortune cookie. There's my fortune cookie for the day. Faster alone, further together.
That is absolutely perfect. I love that. Did you like you didn't just open that, right? You just
No.
had it saved to your
I
computer.
had
Okay.
this from the other night. And actually, that's not what it says. My fortune cookie says, someone who deserves special attention awaits your magic voice. So there you go. That's
I like
borderline
it.
creepy.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I mean, give me some feedback. Is this stuff helping you? Because again,
Yeah.
It is.
I'm
100%.
I'm dead serious. Go on YouTube and look up how to be a strength coach. And you're going to see one video up there and you're going to listen to it. And it's going to be a guy that talks about hard work, determination, internships, college degree. And that drove me nuts. So I did one called How to Be a Strength Coach. And I almost try to scare people out of becoming a strength coach. But like, that's not to be hardcore. It's just to be real. You know how many friends that I have left the industry this year? I had friends that have been strength coaches nearly 2 decades and they're like, yo, I'm out. I got fired. I got furloughed. I got this. I got that. I spent extra hours working on programs. They don't appreciate me. They're doing the, and like, these are people that love the field hardcore, but like, you just got to be ready for the realities. I look at it like the music industry. I really do. Look at it like the music industry. Like, don't go in blind. Be smart about what you're doing. Like, love the craft, love the field, do the thing, but like you don't want to get taken advantage of, because that'll, like, what happens when you have somebody that's like, oh, this person doesn't care what they get paid and they'll work from like 4 a.m. to 6 p.m., and they just like being in the weight room. Awesome. Like, why would they pay you more? You're telling them like, yo, I'm good with like nothing, that's fine. And I think you guys are discerning enough. You get what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying it's all about the money and you got to get the money. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, don't be a sucker. You can't serve other people long-term if you're a sucker, because if you're burnt out, how are you going to pour from an empty cup? When you get on an airplane, whenever that is again, there's a reason they tell you to put your mask on first before helping other people.
Yeah. And, to that point of, just like thinking of this, like the music industry, you should look up this song called The Entertainer, Billy Joel. It's not a known song, but it definitely fits into this kind of like theme here that, people come and go. It's like, what will you do to kind of stand out? So that's just,
and I think the other thing to touch on that I haven't been is like, this field has a lot of takers. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not hit with DMs for people asking for free books, free courses, free this, free that. All people that come in town are like, hey coach, I'm in town. Can you meet me for a cup of coffee? And they're like an hour away. Like, there's a lot of people that don't, and none of those, like, some of those are innocent, right? Some people don't know what they don't know. But like, if you want to stand out, guys, like, provide value and reciprocate. Even when I had like zero cash as a GA, I remember reaching out to somebody that I respected and I'm like, hey coach, I appreciate you have many pulls on your time. I am happy to pay for that time, or I'll leave a review for your book on Amazon, or I'll leave a review for your pod, whatever that is. I found a way to make sure that he knew I wasn't just going to take. You know what I mean? If I have 2 versions, it's Akina, right? That's how you pronounce it. If I have 2 versions of you, right? There's evil Akina and there's nice Akina. And I don't know who's who over the internet, but one version's like, hey coach, have some questions. How'd you get into the field? This, that, whatever. And you just send me brrr, and it's like polite, but like, that's what it is. Or there's another version that's like, hey coach, I understand you're probably busy. And by the way, I have looked into many of your blogs. I have looked at your free career resources thing. I've done my due diligence. However, I had a very specific question about blank. Do you have 5 minutes? I'm always going to answer that second one. I'm always going to answer that, because when I go to the work, and anybody, right? When I go to the work, or anybody goes to the work to put a book or a course or a podcast or a page out, I don't know if I can share my screen. I can't yet. Can you enable my screen?
of course, let's do it.
So, all right, you good? All right. So if I share my screen, let's see here, and I'll do this like just in real time. So if you go to my website and we go to brettbartholomew.net, like I know what that's like to not have guidance. So one day I was like, you know what? I want to put something together that is like, we have one, make yourself indispensable, or everything you need to know about a career in strength and conditioning. So you open that up, right? And this is all free article. And I even categorize it. So I'm like, okay, how do I break into the field? Why can't I find a job? Here's webinars, courses, videos, podcasts. So I get it if you reach out to somebody and it's just like, it's hard to find their stuff, but stand out by doing your due diligence and being reciprocity based first. It doesn't mean you have to pay somebody. It doesn't mean you have to do this. It just means find some way to give back. And I think I didn't appreciate that as much until like I wrote a book or I started putting more stuff out there, or you just see how much people will take advantage of you. Cause at first you're naive. You just want to help everybody, and then you're like, wait a minute. Like, I just feel like every day it's this and this and this and this and this. And so you try, I'll create something, that's like, hey, here's 5 reasons why you should do this exercise. And somebody will be like, what do you think of that exercise? And Sam, I'll be like, well, here's my article on that. I'll be like, yeah, but can't you just tell me? I literally have a list of people. I'm petty. I have a Google Doc of a list of people. It's my takers doc. And if you are rude, you are this, you are that, you go on that doc. And anytime I get asked for something, I open that up. I keep a list. I'm not worried about that at all. Judge me. Like, so just know somebody out there is keeping a list.
I love it. It's it's called the SHIT list essentially. So that's
100%
of 100%.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
100%.
So I absolutely love it. We want to be respectful of your time.
Lindsay thinks I'm crazy. Lindsay, like watching Lindsay over the course of this, she went from sipping a drink to like hiding under her sweater to being like, she's like, this dude is nuts.
No, but seriously, Brett, you're truly a pioneer. Like this, what you're doing is like really amazing work. So
that means a lot. I have trouble internalizing compliments. That's something I'm trying to get better at. I really am not good at taking compliments at all. I'm not impressed with my own work. I am trying my best, right? But I'm also trying to set limits. I'm okay with like, there's tons of nights and stuff. I know I could be more productive. There's more things I could be doing. But I don't always want to. So I think I want that to be my final message to you too. I'm telling you guys to do a lot of different things, educate yourself, be consistent, but also like know where the line is, right? Like I might write one more book and then I might be done. And my next book is going to be pretty contentious. Not everybody's going to like it. I enjoy my podcast thoroughly. I plan on keep doing that forever. I don't like blogging. So I'll blog a little bit, but I'm not going to do a bunch of it. I have YouTube videos. I have a lot of them, but I'm not going to do a bunch of, there's a certain amount that I'm just okay with not doing, so know what like success looks like to you. Like to me, I don't need to be everywhere all the time, this, that, and whatever. Like I just think that you have to know what is enough for you, And if you could have a successful career, what does that mean? And that's going to change and that's going to evolve. But don't be one of those people that needs to like do everything. Do enough that you've experimented. Like the podcast, I know I love because like I feel enthused after it. YouTube, I felt like people just wanted to see again flashy BS that like maybe I wanted to do 10 years ago. Like I'd love showing them drills and everything, but now I'd rather talk about leadership, communication, how to get yourself out of bad situations, how to maximize things, how to become a better communicator. So I think you just really got to hone in on what rejuvenates you and those things. If you do that, you reciprocate and you're always willing to take risks, you're going to come out pretty good, but 99% of people hear all this. They're pumped up for 30 minutes after this call. 2 days later, they ain't doing anything different. Nothing. So seek accountability too. And that's why I say like pay for something. Like if I pay $18,000 for a coach, I'm accountable. And I can sit here and say, but I'm a new dad and it's a pandemic and end of the day, that money's gone. And so I'd say that's where you got to be aware of free too, because anything that's free, cheap, quick, easy, that just allows you to make an excuse. It's not a big deal. I think about the cheap stuff you buy, how well you really take care of it. How well do you really take care of it? You go to the beach, you get those sunglasses from the gas station. They're like $3 till you forgot yours. You don't know where those things are right now. You have no clue. And so don't treat yourself that cheaply either. Like make sure there's some skin in the game. There has to be a consequence if you don't follow through with something. There has to be.
I love it. Yeah, thank you so much. Does anybody have any other questions before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to say thank you for your time. Like, honestly, like, I feel like I've learned more from you than I have being in school.
Wow. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. And hopefully again, I'll give you guys a heads up in November. We're doing you guys are the only ones who really know this. We're doing a 50% off sale on all of our digital courses, all that. It's the only time we've done it. So you got an advance heads up now. If you liked this, I promise I bring 4 times as much fire on those things. Cause I'm not perfect and I don't have all the answers, but I promise you I try. I promise you, just because I never had anybody do that for me. I bought bad products. I did this, I did that. I promise you, I try with everything that I have. So, if you like this, just find whether it's the podcast, the book, of course, please tell somebody about it. It's literally me and my wife that own this business, and we can't keep doing. The only reason I'm able to give you guys this hour of my time is because somebody bought a book in the past, right? Or somebody did a course. We don't get paid hourly. We're doing this stuff to try to help. So just spread the word, leave a review if it matters or it helped you at all. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And give me the benefit of the doubt. If I do something, there's bound to be something you don't like, right? I'm not perfect. That's just, and I hope you understand that too. There's value in imperfection. That's why I tell you, don't try to be like somebody else. Screw being the hero of your own story. Be an anti-hero. Be one of those characters that's got scars and struggles. Then you're not perfect, but you're going to be a lot more relatable to people if you show who you really are,
Thank you so much, Brett Bartholomew. On behalf of the Exercise and Sports Science Association, we just wanted to say thank you again. And let's just give him a 2 clap right now. 2 clap. 2 clap.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great day, guys.